Get strong.
Turn one, exploration, churn these fields, crop rotation, sifting meadows, elves reclaiming, Bajuka, bog drains, yards away, then we cast our way into the north. Dark depths abound, the legend scores of merit lage. In its slumber, Valakut awakens, clash of thunder, the mountains crumble into rubble, flagstones split the ground asunder, plains arise, tectonic tumbler, evolving wilds, fill the bunkers, we venture to the tabernacle, where reliquary knights do battle with riders from the avalanches, who destroy plants, farm, trees, and ranches. The journey seeking the Mox Diamond, a piece so rare no one could find a kaleidoscope of ancient magic to fuel their whole world's demographic. The secret to its potent mana derives from the lands that have been abandoned, where Obosh is ne'er a companion, a demon, horror, nightmare, hellion. Abruptly the blood boon arises, simian spirits pray, it guides them to the legendary Eye of Ugin that harbors alien intruders who pokes the blind eternities. Warp worlds irreversibly, except Caracas, the lone safe haven where legends unite to fight to save them. They travel to the land of Thraben to break the vault where hell has stayed in, releasing demons, plagues, and angels sworn to fend off the disdainful. But a demon's contract's unfulfilled with a chain-veiled mage who's been instilled with everlasting youth and power. Quakes the dead in a field of flowers where grass glows a bright green aura that shimmers off the lotus cobras who slither in a forbidden orchard where the demon rests on holy torture. The grotto gathers oath of druids, 9 hermits who are nature fluent, who call forth a scape shift of magma and banish the demon in a glacial chasm. But the heat that they just seal the ground melts the age-old ice that entraps the bound. An avatar so diabolic, its reign of terror is catastrophic. Thespians have told the tale of an avatar glow with molded scales who blocks the sun and all its light, engulfing worlds in eternal night. Where prairies are turned into Vesuvas, the demon shape shifts into Garuda, a kraken horror so infernal some flowers bend to become nocturnal. Changelings rampage on the islands, waves cascade down on the highlands. The dryad arbors drown in silence, but the willows still burn in defiance. The flames contain the evil minion whose tentacles flash down from the deepness and bash away the punishing fire cast by the trackers who will not tire and fight to their death just like the Abzan. The rhino sees the mile of python who's waked its way up on the shore where it's scored then baked by a flash strip or which burst up from the sand below, from the lonely sandbar which split and throws a royal that spins a tornado that flings large sharks across its airflow. Garuda's pulled into a whirlpool by force so strong Jedi's can twirl through the demons sealed down in the ocean as the forest morphs in slow motion. Yavin Maya's cradle gathers the vegetation left in tatters, revitalizes all its essence with misty colors effervescent. Rain falls on the vast horizon where Vasa waves her magic bident, imprisoning the demon giant within the tides forever silent.
What's up, Phil? What it do?
Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Zach Clark, and with me as always, Phil Bleckman. Phil, how's it going?
Dude, it's good. It's good to be back on the cast for another episode this week after taking a little bit of a hiatus to get on our grind game for the SCGCON.
Indeed. Let's talk about SCGCON. You and I both went, obviously. I went down Saturday afternoon. I went across. I'm in Philadelphia, so this was a perfect. The location was amazing for me. I couldn't ask for a better location unless you were, across the street from the Reading Terminal Market in downtown Philadelphia at the convention center. That would be nice.
Those are the
probably
days.
will never happen again.
Yeah, get some Dinnix between rounds.
Oh yeah, that'd be so good. Let's see here. So let me just go over kind of the broad strokes of how I felt about the weekend as a whole, and then we can talk about the event, the Legacy event itself. Give me 1 second. I'm going to sneeze. Is completed. Okay. Like I said, great location. The hotels were cheap. I split a hotel with 3 other guys, friends of mine. I think we spent like $30 a piece for an overnight, which was great. Space was the space itself, great. It's fine. Like downstairs under the casino, solid. Having a casino there, great. I had a great time Saturday night. We played some craps, played some blackjack, played a little bit of slots. One of my buddies walked off with $1,400. That's always a nice extra thing that can happen at a Magic event,
Good little chunk of change to walk away with.
Yeah. The internet downstairs, if you were just using your phone, was terrible. And
if you had AT&T,
I had AT&T, So also the internet like that they had bought for the place wasn't really working well for me either. Let's talk about the Melee app real fast. Cool idea. I really like the idea of like setting everything into the system, having your deck list ready. That's awesome. I think that's really cool. I think it completely didn't work for me specifically and like 5 other people for the Legacy event.
Here's the thing about the MTG Melee app. The idea itself, great idea, like you said. So far, the 2 Paper Legacy events that I've been to in recent memory are the Legacy Pit event and now the SCG event, both of which tried to use MTG Melee, where you submitted your deck list and everything. And ultimately, both times at the beginning of both events, MTG Melee just did not work for pairings. So I don't know what the issue is that causes it, but like right now it is.
Well, that's the Melee app. That's not the same thing as the companion app. The companion app was supposed to show pairings.
Right, but they did. So either way, with whatever tech that we've been trying to implement for these larger events, it just straight up has not worked and has become a meme at this point. So like I throughout the weekend, I and others had like the continuous joke of the technology failing at the beginning of a tournament has now replaced the like cringy joke that judges would tell that players would look forward to during player meetings.
Definitely. Yeah.
It is just traded. Instead of a cringy joke, we get a failed system. And
you don't want to have your opponent get his deck hit by a Coke of Genius.
We don't want your cards to turn into a Angel of Seren iced tea.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a problem, but certainly circumventable, and I feel like that's all related to the internet that was downstairs. I tried. So here's the thing also about the Melee app. It's fine. I'm sure it works great on a computer, but doing it on your phone, like entering your deck on your phone, impossible. Really hard to do.
The UI is not caught up
yet. It's
not
not good. They should be using something else, and we'll talk about what they should be using in just a moment.
In the MTG Melee app, if you want to put in your sideboard, you have to click sideboard for every single time you enter a sideboard card. So it's like, and that's just like an easy fix, right? Like it should be if you click it, it just stays checked until you decide to take it off. There are very simple fixes that do make a difference in the experience that I don't know if they're going to adopt, but I'm sure they're getting plenty of feedback.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. So open space, because Saturday I didn't really do anything aside from just play Magic with my friends, play some EDH, hung out, wandered around, ate some food, just saw people. This is our first tournament in 2.5 years. It was just nice to walk around and say hi to people.
Yeah, I will say that this event in particular, the layout I thought was the best layout that I wish we'd had for tournaments for years prior to this. And the difference was, instead of very long tables that go like across the convention hall, it was literally individual tables that sat only 4 players apiece. So you could walk in between tables. So it was just more efficient to get to where you needed to go. And also you had way more space at each table because it was only 4 players per table. Now, It's not like we were sitting super far apart from each other, but at no point during the tournament, whenever I played, did I ever feel crowded. Yeah. And that was delightful. And I hope that that's just adopted at every event for the future. That is 4 people per table, and that's it.
Per person space, excellent. My biggest gripe at these things, so it's a con. It's SCGCON, Star City Games Con convention, right? So every con I've ever been to, open gaming is a thing. You can go to Gen Con, you can play at tables. You can go outside, like slightly outside of the con and play games and stuff. So there is a lot of open gaming that can happen at these things. And my biggest gripe was there was no open gaming area. There was like, you could pay to play EDH in an area, which I hate. I hate that so much. Like having to pay to like casual play with people is nuts.
I think for right now, I forgive that kind of thing as space is going to be capped or limited because of COVID. Now, one thing that they did do, though, that was great was they did require proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test to enter each day. Yeah. So that was really well done. They were solid at enforcing that.
Like things,
and that should be the norm for every event ever. Like going forward, it should always be that way. They should always have staff that can handle making sure that only people that are vaccinated or have a negative COVID test can enter at any of these events going forward.
Pretty seamless. You walk in, you get your thing, and it was done.
Very that stuff was very easy. Oh yeah.
That was easier than putting my deck list in. You know,
I totally agree that like there should be open play space in the future when there's like the capacity for that. I can understand right now that being limited. But yeah, I agree that like there should be
just
open
incredibly
play if you're
frustrating to like want to sit down with friends and like talk for a minute, and then all of a sudden some judge walks over and he's like, "Hey, I'm starting an event right here. Get up." You know, and they weren't that rude about it, obviously, but like, and then we'd have like an EDH game going, and they're like, "Get up." And this is like, look, I 100% understand you need to make money, you need to run events, but there needs to be space for people who are just hanging out. Because like we're all going to spend money. Like no one's showing up to these Magic events to not like at least throw down some amount of money or buy cards or sell cards. Like commerce is happening, so like you don't have to worry about like 400 people showing up to your event and freeloading. It's not going to happen. Like that's it's not the player base for these things. It's a convention. There should be a amount of time and space set aside for like free play and hanging out, and I felt constantly pushed around every time I just got a moment to like talk to somebody.
I think having a free play space would be a good addition at events going forward when they know that they are going to have the space for it, depending on like where they are for the convention. I will say that I think that like the idea, like SCGCON as a convention, as opposed to just being a small GP, it's just it's weird branding. It's not a convention. It's not a convention. They're holding 3 tournaments, doing side events. Like there's nothing different.
Tour without the the other stuff.
It's literally it is exactly what the SCG Open was.
Yeah,
they've just rebranded it to call it SCGCon. But it's no different. There's nothing different from what the opens were versus now, except like the layout has improved.
So we got the good, right? We got the space. We got the location. The events were fun.
All in all, this was a huge success in my mind. Like I thought
we got the bad.
Excellent.
The app's not working. You know, space being a bit of an issue. Again, up with the good. The whole vaccination thing, very easy to deal with. And then now let me go into the ugly real fast. Aside from hating the commander fee, that's ugly. I don't like it. I hate. I can't say this word enough. I hate it. I hate the prize wall. Stop with the prize wall. That's garbage. No one wants it. You run out of everything. They run out of everything by the time legacy players get in to do their second event of the day on Saturday. That's ridiculous. You should not be like looking at the end of a tournament on in the middle of this convention and being like, wow, there's nothing good to pick off of this prize wall. Like that is ridiculous.
Do they allow unused prize wall ticks to be converted to store credit?
Nope.
It's just dead. It's just gone.
Dead. It's dead.
Okay, yeah, they should definitely adopt.
It's ridiculous. It's just insane. I hate prize walls. Period. When they did it at GPs, I didn't like it then. Yeah. I don't like it now. I just think like it's such a capitalist, like consumer based thing that they do that like everybody else has started to pick up on too. And it's just all in all bad for the customer. It sucks as a Magic player to be like, okay, here you go. You can buy a deck box with your win from this tournament. Like, give me the ability to buy cards.
Yeah, I think since store credit is essentially free for them anyway, they might as well just adopt a conversion. I think that's an easy fix.
It's ridiculous, and it's insane that they haven't done this yet. I've been arguing with Jeff Hoagland online for years. I am Jeff Hoagland's biggest troll for years about this. This is the worst policy ever. He's totally behind it because he's obviously deep in the SCG pockets. So it is what it is.
I have no idea. I mean, being able to convert prize wall ticks that way, it's not just like it means nothing.
You end up with stuff like this. You end up with giant Magic cards. Nobody wants a giant Magic card. You know what this is? It's a dinosaur. No one wants that. No one wants a dinosaur. There are only 2 in existence. You know what? No one wants it.
I don't know, man. I think have you tried?
Yeah.
I mean, hey, I don't know. Is it going up on the Patreon?
Yeah. If you donate $1,000 in the course of a year, I will sell that card.
Oh shit! Yeah,
free.
Wow, what a marker. So getting back into the actual event, the event was smooth
Before
9
we
rounds.
get into that, Phil, I wanted to note because one of the people I hung out that weekend was Harry from Moxfield.
Oh yeah,
and we now have a sponsor, guys. So let's talk about Moxfield real quick. So Moxfield's quickly becoming like the standard choice for deck lists. I've been using it for. I just looked on the site today. I've been using it for 4 years.
What is Moxlist?
One of the best deck list sites out there. It's
cool.
Super smooth. My buddies Harry, who I literally started playing Magic with, and John created the site, and they added support for pre-modern and old school onto there before Scryfall did that. And it's just the best place to share EDH deck lists, and it's great for brewing legacy lists as well. You can mark so you can follow other users' deck lists, and you're able to mark cards that you own versus cards that you don't own. So if you're still like trying to brew and looking for things, that doesn't mess up like what you have in your mind as far as what you need to go grab. And it works. So remember what we were talking about with Melee? It works really well on your iPhone, on your Android, on your iPad, on any device that can connect to the internet. It works great, and it's very easy to use. And I think they should be using this for deck lists instead of the other thing that they were using. But below in the doobly-doo there, we're gonna have a link to both of our Moxfield accounts. I've got like 50, 60, maybe even more decks for EDH and for Legacy, pre-modern, old school on there. And of course, we're gonna start an Eternal Durdles Moxfield, so you can see the decks that we're playing and brewing as well. Free to join. So yeah, just go down, check out Moxfield.
Essentially what it's going to do is it was functionally, I was like, oh, I'm kind of already doing this in my notes app with just like infinite deck lists. Yeah. And then when they reached out and were like, hey, we want in with you guys, check this stuff out. And then you told me about it and you were already using it. I was like, all right, yeah, this seems sweet because I'm already doing this. I'm just doing it on my notes app.
There's like a place for it, and it's like, I don't know if you've gotten a chance to mess around with it on the iPhone, but it's like 1,000 times better than what they were trying to get us to use it at the SCGCON.
I think the thing that I like that I never thought that I would want is when I'm constantly just finagling numbers on deck lists, being able to track like the changes that I make over time as I'm trying out different card slots. I was like, oh, I was doing this all the time, and I was kind of just mentally tracking those changes. Like, the last 6 cards in Miracles that I'm constantly turning over. And I was like, oh, now I don't have to just use brain space for that. I can just look at the log.
You can even say cards that you're thinking about including in the deck. Like there's a whole space for that. And there's a goldfishing spot too. So you can like go and play test the deck and just to see how it runs. So, Moxfield, guys, get in there.
Get on Moxfield. Speaking of cards that we were trying out, boy, howdy, did I try out Malevolent Hermit at the SCG.
Yeah, you did.
I played 4 Malevolent Hermit in my Jeskai Miracles list at the SCG, and it was starting to pick up like headlines in Doomsday, and that the Doomsday list that's playing no LEDs, but it's playing 4 Murktides. And it's just sort of like a tempo Doomsday list. And the backside just says your stuff is uncounterable and it's really solid. So I tried it out in Miracles and found that it was actually really solid against a pretty solid amount of decks. It was really good against Blue-Red Delver because unlike Source of Plowshares that can remove the front half, if they bolt the front half, you just get the Geist on the back half and then all of your stuff is uncounterable. And the number of times that I was able to just play that and then jam Jace the Mind Sculptor on 4 mana, not having to care about Force or Daze, felt really, really good. So that card, I think, is one of the cards that just didn't get enough attention that should. So for anybody who's like uninterested in playing like Safari Time Raveler or is not in white, you should probably take a look at Malevolent Hermit because the play patterns of it are a lot smoother than you might think. And mana leak on a creature on the board changes play patterns a lot. It seems like, oh yeah, it's not gonna do anything. It has the effect of stalling the opponent because it's an onboard trick. So they have to figure out what to try and bait you with to get it off the table, which changes their sequencing. And then you can actually decide what you want. And if you're in a deck that wants to go longer and wants to develop, if they just don't cast their haymaker spells into your onboard trick, and you just get time to develop, essentially like you would in the old Mana Leak days, where you would just play out an additional 3 lands before casting your spell, so you can play around Mana Leak. That's a lot of time in this format.
Yeah,
it's a lot of
like
time.
Having a Spiketail Drake on the board in Mercadian Masks Limited. People would just be like, I guess I have to wait a turn to cast everything.
The similar way that it's really obnoxious to play against a Fairy Time Raveler and Allosaurus Shepherd because your stuff just you just don't have to care about your opponent across the table. This one did it in a similar vein, or Benevolent Geist is the backside, which does it in a similar vein. But the card is also a 2-for-1, so you do have to pick your spots when you're playing against a Swords to Plowshares deck, because, like, for example, I ran into the mistake of just not having gotten enough reps with the card before the event. I mean, I was already dead at the tournament, but there was a game where I played Malevolent Hermit on 2 with 2 mana and then had a fetch open. But my opponent played a spell. I cracked the fetch and then they swords the Malevolent Hermit in response and I didn't have a mana to counter their spell anymore. So, like, that's just like one of those things where once you get in your reps, you recognize if you're going to crack that fetch anyway, do it beforehand and not give them the window. But beyond that, like, the card was stellar. It's obviously not good against the stuff that the uncounterable clause on the backside doesn't really matter against. So, like, I boarded it out against D&T and stuff like that. But the card was definitely an all-star, and I think it should against. I mean, I never want to see it across the table, but it probably should get more attention that it has thus far in Legacy, at least.
Yeah. So let's do it this way, Phil. Let's do your round 1, my round 1.
Sure. In round 1, I played against Blue Red Delver. It was a really a solid back and forth. The all-star throughout the entire match was definitely Malevolent Hermit. Just being a natural 2-for-1 that you could get down on 2. It felt a lot like what Baleful Strix was in the old Gristis control days, where you cast Malevolent Hermit, and then if they interact with it at all, that's great. And if they don't interact with it at all, that's great. It's just one of those cards where you're like, I don't care what happens. This is either going to help me develop or cost you resources. Because if you fight over it and it goes to the yard, it's just another card sitting in my yard, so it's 2-for-1. And if you don't interact with it, then it's just an onboard trick that eventually will become a 2-for-1. So the card was an all-star, like against Power Blast, against Bolt. I jammed it constantly into counter magic that I was hoping to bait. It did a lot of work, and my opponent was really feeling it because they were spending their Power Blasts dealing with that as opposed to dealing with, like, Jace, which is what they want to use it on. And then, of course, I was playing 3 Mystic Sanctuary, 2 Entreat list because I think that's just a stellar way to go over the top. And machine gunning Entreats really did help. But it was really on the back of being able to put them to tap out through a Benevolent Geist on the back half. So, but quick 2-0 victory in that matchup, but really interesting games.
Yeah. I went 0-2 in the first round against Death and Taxes. I was on Bug Death Shadow. So playing against a deck that had access to 8 Swords to Plowshares, and it's 80. And it's, 95, I guess we'll call it, was not a feel good, for sure. Playing against this guy, Max, super nice dude. And I was kind of still learning the deck at that point. Game 1, he just got me after like a couple plays. Like, we just traded back and forth, and he had a swords and kind of put me back to 13 life, and that ruined me for the game. I never had an instance during the weekend where, like, I had two guys die to 1 Swords Plowshare, so I was not worried about that happening to me. That said, in the second game, he cast Sanctum Prelate for 1 and just dunked me. Like, I couldn't do anything about that card. I didn't get any of my snuff outs, which would have been great to have. So kind of is what it is there. So yeah, D&T in the first round was not exactly what I wanted to see against across the table from me. Round 2.
That's what I faced in round 2. I faced D&T in round 2. The games, it was a really fast 2-0. It was pretty ABC as it comes to Miracles versus D&T. It's a very good matchup for me. It's one that I always want to see. I just went Miracle for 3, Entreat the Angels for 3, Entreat the Angels for 4 on back-to-back turns, and games ended pretty quickly. I finished the round with like 20 minutes left, which is unusual for a control deck, even though I feel like even like I'm a Miracles player who like I feel like I play fairly quickly in matchups that I'm accustomed to. If I'm playing against something that I've never seen before, I have to take my time and figure out what matters. But if I'm playing against like Blue Red Delver, DNT, any of the known matchups, I've got enough reps that I understand the matchups and how to navigate them. And at the end of round 2, I was sitting there with like a juicy 20 minutes left in the round, which was nice to go grab some coffee, go grab, in between. And that was nice. But the games themselves were interesting games. It was just very ABC from my standpoint of develop, hit an entreat, Mystic Sanctuary for entreat, end the game. And that's what happened.
It seems like it'd be very hard for them to deal with a couple of 4/4s.
That they struggle against something that goes so wide, and also they don't have many blockers for it when the game hasn't fully developed and you've been disrupting them with like all of your white cards have text against them, which is where Miracles wants to be. Like when you go into an event with Miracles, you are conceding that you're going to be soft, at least these days. Like back in the old top counterbalance days, you were good against combo, but these days you are going into an event assuming that your white cards will have text, and if that is the case for the majority of your rounds, you'll probably do well.
Yeah. So my round 2 was against Kate, and it was Reanimator. I got waffle stomped in the first round when I had out 3 Death Shadows ready to swing in, and she reanimated a Sarah's Emissary named Creature, and I did not have a snuff out.
We actually needed snuff out a lot, huh?
Yeah, so she didn't even reanimate it. She exhumed it, and then she called a judge to check and see if I would be allowed to attack with my Street Wraith. And I was like, yeah, you could definitely. I could attack with the Street Wraith. It just won't hurt you. You have protection from all of my creatures. You can't be enchanted by my creatures. You can't. My creatures can't block your creatures. Or block you, I think, the way Sarah's Emissary is written. And I can't target you with my creatures. It's dead. Anyhow, so game 1, I just got halted. Game 2, I think I won with Delver's Secrets and just like a little bit of tempo, some stifles. And then game 3, I kept a no-lander at 5 with 2 Force of Wills in my hand and was like, this is something. But it just wasn't good enough. The games were fun, but unfortunately, that last game was just a rout.
In round 3, you and I seem to have a similar event because I played Reanimator in round 3.
There we go.
This particular round wasn't all that exciting.
So right now you're 1-2-0. You're 2-0, and I'm 0-2.
I beat Blue Red and I beat DNT in the first 2 rounds, feeling good because I'm like, these are exactly the kind of decks that I want to be facing all day. Yep. My deck is built to have good matchups against these decks that I feel like are going to show up a lot. But then in round 3, I played against Reanimator. I win the die roll, but I don't know what I'm playing against. Right, we're in the dark, and I keep a hand that is good against those kinds of decks. But I need to develop on my 2-land. It's 2-lander. It's a fetch and a Mystic Sanctuary. And my hand is very good as long as I can develop. If I get to untap with my turn 1 Mystic Sanctuary, my hand will be very good against those kinds of decks, right? Not the cleanest, but I'm like, I have a Ponder, I have a Swords, I have 2 lands, I have a Malevolent Hermit. Like my early game is in this hand. Let me keep this in the dark.
Let's do it, yes.
So my opponent goes pre-game effect and shows me the Chancellor.
No.
And I'm like, okay, well, this is one of those things where if they have it, like my hand is not set up to beat Reanimator, especially because they kept 7. And I'm like, even if I ponder and find a force effect, my hand is otherwise not set up to deal with Reanimator at all.
I mean, at least you have that Swords. You've got that Swords in your hand.
I've got the Sword. So I'm like, okay, I will develop. So I play out Mystic Sanctuary, which was just a mistake, obviously. I get easily belched on turn 1, puts a Grizzlebrand into play. I play it out because I'm not dead throughout. Like I do have live draws throughout because the way that they win is still through attacking. Yeah. And so I'm able to convert some amount of my white cards, but I just get buried under the Grizzlebrand card advantage on turn 1. So it was a non-game entirely. Game 2, kind of like you draw it up, board and all the hate. I have the hate plus a clock. Game ends. Nothing really interesting happens. Game 3, he opened with an absolutely insane 7. My 7 had Force plus blue card plus Surgical. So I'm like, great. I don't have a clock, but I do have exactly what I'm looking for. I have 2 pieces of interaction on the play, on the draw. So I'm going to go up a card. I'll be able to fight over a turn 1 through 2 pieces of interaction. At least get me to a couple of turn cycles. Not to be the case. He turn one, he goes Grief, exile card Grief. So I'm compelled to force that, right?
Yep.
Because otherwise he sees my hand, he knows how to navigate it, and he's going to snag one of the pieces of interaction anyway. And I'd prefer to have the Surgical than the Force here, because that's the thing that's going to clear, that's going to trade for a card as well.
Of course.
So I force the Grief. He proceeds to Dark Ritual, or not to Dark Ritual. He reanimates the Grief. So I'm like, okay, well now if he reanimates, he just takes my Surgical anyway. So now I'm priced into Surgicling. So I Surgical the Grief. He's left with 3 cards in hand, and those 3 cards are exactly Faithless Looting, Grizzlebrand, Reanimate.
Oh.
And then of course he untaps Faithless Looting into a second mana source, reanimates the Grizzlebrand.
Yep.
So
that'll do it.
The game, even though there was a lot of game actions taken, there was 0 agency over the course of it.
Yeah.
We both just showed we laid down our 7s and lined them up.
Yep.
And it's one of those things where like that game was actually on camera for 90s MTG. Chris Paducci recorded 18 matches across the day. So if you want, you can check out that was one of the matches that was recorded, so you can watch it. Watching it is more interesting.
Maybe we'll link it in the doobly-doo.
Yeah, but when you actually analyze the game, we both just turned our hands face up and lined them up, and that was it. I got belched, and so I'm 2-1 going into round 4.
My round 3 was against like Esper Stoneblade. He told me it wasn't Esper Stoneblade, but I saw all the things that make Esper Stoneblade. So I don't know what his deck was, but it looked like Stoneblade to me. And if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and there's duck dew on your pickup truck, you can bet your bottom bucket ain't no armadillo.
Hey, people keep saying that I play Miracles, and I tell them that I play Angel Stompy. Yeah.
So this was a pretty first game. He got me just got me with what's called Stoneforge Mystic into I think Kadra, just like boop, 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 boop. Got me. I couldn't do anything about it. I lost. Game 2, he mulls to 5. I wrote out a Protect the Queen strategy with Delver of Secrets for 7 turns, and that worked fine. In game 3, he gets out of Stoneforge, but I stifled the trigger for him to go search his library. And he was gonna be in a situation where he could block me for a few turns with my Death Shadow being pretty big. I want to say it was like an 8/8 or a 9/9. And he was lower than the amount of life needed for me to berserk it and kill him. So and he didn't see the berserk coming. So that was great. The greatest thing about this deck is just being able to like get people with berserk. They're not expecting berserk.
How many dress downs were you playing?
2 in the board. Only 2 in the board. And the deck is so tight right now. I thought about playing dress down main. We were talking about this before, but it's just so tight. Like I only have room for 2 Delvers in the deck. I'm playing just 2 Delvers. I'm playing 61 cards, which is already like
you shouldn't be doing that.
Land.
I promise you there's no card valuable enough to play the 61st.
But how do you feel about in my deck,
buddy?
Sylvan Library.
Buddy. I do like the Sylvan Library, but let me tell you, there is no card good enough to play 61.
I agree with you. I copied this list and decided like I would just see what I want to cut from it and go from there. Honestly, I didn't have any problems with the 61 card list. It didn't bother me at all. But being able to slam Berserk certainly won me that game, and it felt good. Round 4. I am now 1-2, by the way.
Yeah, so in round 4, it was actually a really enjoyable match. I got paired, unfortunately, against Sam Rukas, who I actually drove to the event.
Friend of the show, Sam Lucas.
Yeah. Sam Rukas. We were in the same hotel room. We traveled to all these events together. So we both knew what we were playing going in as we opened our 7s and everything. And the way that the deck lists line up is I am just more. We have the same white cards that are not really going to trade for anything. So we both know that the white cards don't really matter as much. But I'm on Malevolent Hermit. And that was the kind of card that really shines in this kind of matchup. He was playing Jeskai Mentor with like some War of the Spark Planeswalkers, some Mentors, like the good controlling Jeskai cards. We were both on 4 Expressive Iteration, the whole 9. But the difference is he's playing cards that I can convert white cards with like he's playing 3 mana Mentor and he's not playing any Jace the Mind Sculptor. I was playing 3 Jace, And because neither of us are on Wasteland, we both know that we're going to get to easily develop.
Yeah.
And in those kinds of scenarios, I'm just the bigger deck. I was the bigger version of what we are essentially playing as the same shell.
Yeah.
But while he's trying to play Mentor and play a bunch of spells, I'm just trying to push through one Entreat and then start Mystic Sanctuary looping it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day,
quite good.
Because I'm playing Mystic Sanctuaries and he wasn't, it also means that I'm a bit more threat dense, just naturally as we go along for the cards that are actually going to matter. So he was on a bunch of Murktides as well, and those actually were really powerful. He did a lot of work with those. That match is also on 90s MTG, and it was really, really interesting match. So highly recommend, if you want to watch any of my matches from the event, go over to 90s MTG on the YouTube or on the VOD on Twitch, and you can watch my matchup against Sam. Really, really interesting games. He got me down to 1 off of multiple Murktide triggers, making his Murktides bigger, really compelling. Malevolent Hermit did a ton of work, and he was trying to figure out how to navigate properly against Malevolent Hermit, and it was an absolute all-star in this kind of matchup. So if you want to see the power of Malevolent Hermit, this was definitely a matchup to check that out in.
Awesome.
But this was, even though it was unfortunate to play against, the guy that I traveled to the events with, it's always a blast to play against Sam because he's a really proficient player. We both understand the matchup really intimately. We both play very fast, and just an absolute joy to play those kinds of matchups. But it just sucks that it came right at the bubble where we were going to knock one of each other out of the event.
You're in or out of the tournament there.
Yeah. So what ultimately got there for me was Malevolent Hermit plus Mystic Sanctuary was just the haymakers. They did enough work. And
so how are you putting the Mystic Sanctuary back on top of your deck or back into your hand?
So in my list, in my 75, I play 3 Mystic Sanctuaries, and that's usually enough to get the job done off of an Entreat. So you'll see, like, if you go and watch the game, there's one point where I jam through an Entreat, I get like 3 or 4 Angels, and then I cast a second Entreat that gets Force and Negation, but then I still have Mystic Sanctuaries to get more Entreats going.
Yeah.
So I'm playing 3 I was at that event, I was playing 3 Mystic Sanctuary to begin with, but then in my sideboard, I was playing the Thwart, specifically for the kind of games that do go long.
Sneaky dude.
So I'm a real advocate for a triple Mystic Sanctuary plus Thwart. The thing is that it's not the kind of card you want against, you don't want that kind of card against
Delver.
You don't want it against Delver, right?
Yeah.
But I do want it against the Uro decks that we're just going to be trading. We're going to be going along forever. And those games often come down to they can endurance themselves and not deck. And the thing is that isn't forever if I trade white cards for their endurances.
Yeah.
Whereas if I have Mystic Sanctuary plus Thwart, even if they counter the Thwart, as long as it's not Force and Negation, I'm picking up Mystic Sanctuaries, and then I'll never deck because I can always commit one of those Mystic Sanctuaries to picking the Thwart back up and keeping that loop going. So it's inevitable that if the game ever comes down to decking, which those kinds of control matchups often do, I'm going to be the one that actually has the inevitability. So I play it on the board for those kinds of matchups. And it's great. I mean, you haven't lived until you've got multiple Mystic Sanctuaries on the board and you thwart something.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
It sounds gimmicky, but it's legitimately strong.
So I'm 1-2 going into round 4, feeling like I could leave at any moment. I want to go to the Super Bowl. Go to the Super Bowl. I want to watch the Super Bowl. I'm a Bengals fan, so I'm half in, half out of this tournament at this point. And I go up against Burn. I came with a person who plays Burn exclusively, so that was the only reps I got in before the tournament, and it's a wild dance, man. Burn versus Death Shadow is just like that should be a dual deck, you let them do the work for you, right? Well, so I'm doing the work for them. Really, it's the other way around because I don't. I know that you have to get your life total down, but I'm saying that it's isn't. At least I remember from it's fast. I mean, I cast a turn 2 Death Shadow against my opponent.
Totally. I remember playing Death Shadow in Modern, and I mean, it might be different because Legacy has like Force and Wasteland and stuff. Yeah. But at least in that format, when the heuristic was you let your shocks come into play tapped and stuff because they do the damage for you, so you don't need to do the proactive work of getting your life total down.
Fetched my 1 underground, the 1 duel I have in the deck against him in both games that I think it was a 3-game match. Both games that I won just because I was like, okay, I can slow it down now and have a better feel for what's going to happen. I probably brought in a tapped green source at one point too.
Dress down seems excellent in this matchup to just turn your Death Shadow into a 13/13 and get him.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't bring in Death Shadow. Death Shadow. I didn't bring in Dress Down against him because I was more worried about just stopping. I just wanted to stop his creatures. If I could stop his creatures, I can control the rest of the game pretty well. And so the big plays were like I had 2 Death Shadows out, knowing that he can't swords me, and I attacked with both of them. Berserked one, he blocked the other, and he died. And then in that set up kind of the situation in game 3 where I'm at 6 life. My opponent cast Lava Spike. He's got 2 Monastery Swift Spears on the board, and I have a tapped Death Shadow and a Grimmaw Gangler in play. And I know that I have to I stifle. I only card I've got left is a stifle, so I stifle one of his triggers. Now he's got 5 damage on the board coming at me. I can block 3 of it, and threes on the stack. I take the 3. He passes turn. I untap. He's at 10. I attack with my Death Shadow, and I think he got scared that I would be able to get him with my Death Shadow if I berserk. So he blocked with both guys, and then it was kind of over. He just had I was at 3 life, and I had to fade a bolt effect for a turn, and I did. Luckily, that never happens to me when I'm on the line. Yeah, that was it. So I beat Burn, which was pretty wild. I was basically just dream crushing all day long at this point.
I mean, as you should.
Yeah, as you should.
Splitting is quitting.
Round 5.
Round 5, not much to report here. This match was also caught on camera for 90s MTG, so you can check it out. I was in, again, we're in the dark. I have no idea what I'm playing, who I'm playing, the deck that I'm playing against, but it ends up being Turbo Mystic Forge Karn combo. Okay. So it's essentially a deck that's like based on Grim Monolith and keys to make fast mana, but the deck is built upon its 8 4-drops, Mystic Forge and Karn. And if it doesn't have either of those things, it just doesn't do anything. So I do know, at least from the makeup of having seen that deck before, that it has 8 haymakers and that's it. Everything else is fluff.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I just need to fight over those haymakers. And it really just comes down to, do I draw enough answers to 4-drops versus the amount of 4-drops that they draw? And so again, it's the kind of matchup where you kind of just open your 7, lay them down. And if I have more answers than you have 4-drops, I win. And if you have more 4-drops than I have answers, I win. And even though there's a lot of game actions otherwise, the games are exceedingly uninteresting beyond that. It's either I get belched or I stop from getting belched. So nothing really to report. We played 2 games. He had more 4-drops than I had answers to them, and that was it.
There you go.
So I'm knocked out at this point in the tournament. I'm 3-2.
3-2. And so into round 5 for me, I play against Elves, which I traditionally so this deck, the bug list feels a lot like Rug Delver in that I'm playing Stifles, I'm playing Delver. You know, I have the low end threats and then the late game stuff. And so I have worry because they can often just block me into oblivion, right? And then get their thing and then cast Natural Order and beat me. I was also worried about Allosaurus Shepherd, which I've never physically seen on a table before, and just was like, like Allosaurus Shepherd. So game 1, he starts off with Allosaurus Shepherd. I snuff it and go down. I like cycle 2 straight race, and I think I was able to play immediately a 1/1 Death Shadow and just held there. He didn't get off on the first turn. And then, or on the second turn, and then on the third turn, he ended up just getting me with guys. He just had he got a bunch of dudes out, cast the Glimpse of Nature, and got like 6 guys out, and then I really didn't have much I could do, and he could block me with the what's it called Symbiote, bouncing his guys with Symbiote. So game 2, I sided in Toxic Deluge and Plague Engineer and a bunch of other things that I thought would be good against him. And boy, howdy, does Toxic Deluge feel really good when you're like, I'll Toxic Deluge for 1, wipe your board, my 6/6 stays a 6/6, I'll attack, untap, smash you. He had like no cards in hand either. Like it was just like he was just doing the like bounce your visionary, draw a card, extra card every turn, and me wiping everything on the board, and then like all he had in his hand was an Elvish Visionary.
I mean, you have who amongst us does not want to have a 1/1 Death Shadow on the table, Toxic Deluge down to 1 life, and then get in.
I mean, you're still only getting in for 1, unfortunately, because the Toxic Deluge minuses the Death Shadow as well.
But it's sending a message, my guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know. I only did it for 1 each time. I did it in the second game as well. But in the second game, he played the like layer of the Hydra or whatever from the AD&D set. And
hey man, make a ton of mana, get in.
Well, I'll tell you what, man. In a deck that you would think would not have any problem producing mana, I stifle wastelanded him out of that the first part of that game, and then just he didn't see the berserks, you know, and I got him with the berserk again. Like, man, the deck feels just so much better having access to this card that just like not only ends the game but stops blocking from being an issue. People are just like not ready for berserk at all. And like, you know, in a pinch, you can berserk your opponent's creature if it's a real problem, and kill it. I would have been ready if I could have cast berserk against that Sanctum Prelate in the first round to the Sanctum Prelate, but it didn't. Obviously, I couldn't cast it. So now I'm 3-2, and I pieced out. I had to go home and watch the Bengals lose.
Yeah, so I did end up I stayed because people in my car were either still live for money, I think, at this point. So in round 6, I played against Bug Death Shadow. Again, the games were the first 2 games were somewhat interesting. We went back and forth. The discard spells were really the game changers for them. White cards were the game changers for me. Jace the Mind Sculptor's the house.
Interesting point that both the Bug Death Shadow decks were at the same rank at that point in the day.
Unfortunately, in round 3, I had the always dangerous Multi 6 1-land Ponder Brainstorm hand. Ooh. So I keep it. Obviously, I'm not going to 5 against the Thoughtseized deck. So I ponder, miss, untap, brainstorm, miss, and the game promptly is over. Yeah. So goodbye. It was an interesting 2 games. I guess in my situation, I should go to 5 on that. I mean, if you tell me I'm going to 6 with Ponder Brainstorm,
I think you keep Ponder Brainstorm land and
Ponder Brainstorm land. I'm keeping that 100%.
You're gonna have to. You have to, and you got to hope that like you're gonna hit. And even if you get wastelanded, you're going to get another land, right?
Yeah, like, I mean, I was playing a 21 land list, even though I was playing 3 Mystic Sanctuaries. So like I had, a third of my deck still was land that I was digging towards. But the game promptly ended after I cast that brainstorm and then had nothing else going on. So I am now 3-3. Yep. Moving into round 7, I played against 4-color control Uro.
I am currently, by the way, eating a Flamingon slider at this point.
You're doing it way better than me. Yeah, you're doing it way better than me. So I'm playing against 4-color Uro pile. This is a matchup that I'm intimately aware of, like the cards that matter. He's going to try and wasteland lock me with his loams off of multiple whites to keep off my Entreat the Angels if he knows that's what I'm on. I understand that that's the thing that matters. So I need to make sure that his Firewalkers stay off the table. By Firewalkers, I mean the 3-drop walkers from War of the Spark. And I'm going to be better set up because I'm just like the cleaner control deck. Even though he's got a lot of tools, a lot of his tools are tapping out. A lot of his tools are beaters that I don't care about that I can just trade with for swords. I'm happy to be playing against this matchup. And there were some tight interactions that went all the way through. Obviously, like we both are playing very strong cards. It can go either way, but ultimately, like in the post sideboard game, Surgical hitting the Wasteland, so his loans were just functionally like put lands into your hand, and then they only matter if you have brainstorm effects. I'm very keenly aware of that. I make sure that those patterns don't happen. Really solid games, interesting stuff, but I'm able to pull out the dub, and I go to 4-3. In the last round, I played against Tess. Really interesting games, but again, all of my losses on the day came from playing against degeneracy.
Was this round sponsored by the epicstorm.com?
Unfortunately, Brian calls me a clown, and the feeling is mutual. So, the thing is, what was cool though was the player that I played against did pull out Brian's token pack, and we were joking. I was like, "Oh no, I'm gonna have to take pictures of Brian when I cast Null Rod against you," and all that stuff. So it was fun. The games were really interesting. But again, like I'm obviously a dog in those kinds of matchups because Source to Plowshares doesn't have any text. And Prismatic Ending only has text if they allow it to. Yeah. So, the games were very tight. We went to a solid 3 games, really interesting back and forths, but I took the loss there. So I ended up going 4-4. All in all, the event was an absolute blast, even though I did not expect to go up against as much degeneracy in terms of pairings as I ended up doing. There was more of that in the room than I was expecting, for sure. But the event itself, I thought, was fairly smooth outside of the delay in the tech early on. I'm still an advocate for getting rid of 5 additional turns. I think, like, if it goes to time, if the time hits in the round, it's draws. It's okay to have draws. Just take the draws rather than, every round is going to 20 minutes over, like 20 minutes.
Every single round was like 20, 25 minutes plus.
Every single time. And it's only because it's untimed 5 additional turns. So people are like tanking and thinking and really going through the motions. And it's just like, get rid of that. If you want to streamline your tournaments, just fucking get rid of 5 additional turns. If the clock hits, I get that, like, you need to be more active on getting people to play faster, but I'm very much in the camp of get rid of 5 additional turns. And it's okay to just have more.
It's a hot take.
It's just,
for sure.
It's totally reasonable to just have more draws, and then the draw bracket isn't like this random thing where it's only going to be nothing but control players. Just if there are more draws in an event, it's totally fine if it can streamline the event. And if anything, I think, like, it would even be reasonable for draws to just award no points.
Yeah, I think that's what it should. You should get no points for draws and then negative points for losses.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
you can incentivize draws, but yeah. All in all, I thought the event was very well run, very, very solid. I love the 4 players per table aspect of it, and hope that's adopted forever. So
my big takeaway was that after I sold so many of my cards, I can't really play much that's not this deck at this point. And my takeaway was, like, this deck is actually pretty good.
One thing to our listeners. So apparently Ren and 6 is going to get reprinted in the upcoming Double Master set. I don't know if it was, I was on the car ride home. I was just shown artwork that was, when they announced Double Masters, they shared artwork with Ren and 6. And Ren and 6 I had 2 Ren and 6s and sold them both for $80 to a vendor cash. So I get that they're like 100 or 110 or whatever right now, but vendors are buying them high. And if it's going to get reprinted, I mean, the price will stay the same, but, like,
sell now, yeah,
because it's a 4 of in a bunch of modern decks and in every EDH deck. But, like, I don't know. I was like, I'm going to get out right now. So if anybody else wants to as well,
that was definitely the hot sell of the weekend, was everyone getting rid of their Ren 6s for like $80 to $90.
Yeah.
Real quick shout out to our Patreon supporters. That's patreon.com/Eternal Durdles. Down in the comment section there, you can see that. Again, this is the stuff that goes towards helping Phil and I create more music for the cast, create faster casts at a more opportune time for everybody, and just getting more content out there. So, hey, support us on Patreon. You're supporting a local business at this point. And we're gonna have go on.
I was saying, now that we got Moxfield on board with us, and potentially future sponsors.
Yeah, get on the Moxfield too. Do it.
Yeah. Everything coming up roses for the casts. We're hyped for 2022 to be a cool year for just like a bunch more content, getting more parodies and stuff. And if there are more paper events that are reasonable travel distance for us to get to, I can't wait to go to another paper event. I'm very hyped.
Me too. I'm psyched. So yeah. So again, let me just say, if you jumping on Moxfield, great way to support the cast. Liking, sharing, subscribing, a great way to support the cast. Jumping onto our Discord, another great way to support the cast. So if you're thinking about supporting the cast, several ways to do it. All of those ways are free. And the Patreon, you can do it for $1. We're down for that. No one's mad at you if you do it for $1. We love it. I think that's it for us this week. Y'all have a great one. Phil, I'll catch you on the flip.
Later.
Hey yo, what up? It's Fortune Phillip on the track. I'm here with Dukes on Twitch and we about to break it down. What it do?
Green Sun Zenith, finding Dukes on Twitch's creatures. Green Sun Zenith. Green Sun Zenith, making Dukes on Twitch a genius. Green Sun Zenith. Green Sun Zenith. Green Sun Zenith. Green Sun Zenith. Green Sun Zenith, making Dukes on Twitch a genius. Green Sun Zenith.
Yo, Duke's all over Twitch, playing Maverick like a maestro. Give the man a dryad arbor, Green Sun's out at night. The reliquary, you're requesting beast for the beats. While you seethe in your seat, staring at his gaddock teague. You can't breathe cause you're getting choked, blast you in the zone. Call him Shang Tsung cause he's got a cabin full of souls. Wasting all your lands, excavate them, guarded Raven's graves, arranging ram you nap until he wakes you for a bane slaying. He's liberating outlands like a night of autumn. Trading swords for plows, endurance flips you to the bottom. Go and wait on under with the Dukes. Welcome to Australia. He collected wins like an oof paraphernalia. The birds of paradise flying over the savannas, where Dukes is walking proud, balling out in regalia. He's the noble hierarch held in Gaia's cradle, gazing up upon the skies where he sees his savior.
Green Sun Zenith, finding Dukes on Twitch's creatures. Green Sun Zenith. Green Sun Zenith, making Dukes on Twitch a genius. Green Sun Zenith. Green Sun Zenith. Green Sun Zenith. Green Sun Zenith. Green Sun Zenith, making Dukes on Twitch a genius. Green Sun Zenith.
Archie.